right, let's start off by saying Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Racha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. Pretty much the name of this one is various topics dated January 5th, 2024, the hopeful year of Jacob's trouble. And pretty much this video, this, it's just a various topics, but one thing I was thinking about earlier, I went for a walk and I was listening to Elder Apostle Tar's video, and he was speaking about the disciples and how these commentators try to say that the disciples, James, was reading the Septuagint, and that's how he came up with certain things in Acts. I believe that was the 15th chapter, excuse me. And it got me to thinking about a conversation. I did a lesson on this before a couple of times, but a conversation I was having with the Elder Bishop Ayathan a couple of days ago about, because they have this thing that Yahushai spoke the Aramaic language, and I don't really have anything planned. So whatever the Spirit feeds me, I feed you, brothers. But this is one thing I was thinking about, and Lord will hit a few points on that and see where the Spirit leads, and take it from there. So the topic of the language that Yahushai spoke came up, and the scholars out there pretty much say that Yahushai spoke the Aramaic language, which the Aramaic language, Aramaean, goes back to the word Syrian, or the Syrian script, which when you get the Torahs today, are for the most part they're written in the Aramaean language, and you can type that in and see that's the one, the language that or the characters that the Bible in the Hebrew is translated into, or should I say written in. And I don't believe Yahushua was speaking the Hebrew language. I'm sorry, the Aramaean language. Salaki, that was a slip of the tongue. One slip of his tongue, but not from his heart. I don't believe that he was speaking Aramaic, and I'm going to explain why. And the reason why I believe that is because, or I don't believe that, is because when you go to the Aramaic language itself, that was pretty much like the language of the learned. And Yahushai and the disciples, they were considered unlearned men. Even though Yahushai knew pretty much everything there is to know, but since he didn't come up in their colleges, they didn't consider him to be learned. And there was another point that just came to mind, and another precept that came to mind I was going to start off with, but it kind of escaped my mind for the moment. If it comes back, I'll bring it up. If not, then it ain't meant to be. Lord's will, it'll come back. But I mean, that's, like I said, it's my personal belief that Yahushua didn't speak the Aramaic language, because that was considered the language of the learned back then. I'm going to explain what I mean by that through the scripture. But the first precept we're going to get, now I wish that other precept would come to mind. The first precept that I'm going to get is the book of Acts 26. All right, and I'm going to start at 13. The point is, in the 14th verse, this is the conversion of the Apostle Paul. And when Yahushua came to him and knocked him off the horse, because he was on a mission to persecute the what they called the Christians back then, which were Israelites that believed in the Messiah. And he was on a mission. He was hot, on that mission. And the Lord knocked him off the horse and blinded him for a period of, I believe that was 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. It could have been longer. I believe it was 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. But the voice came to him and spoke to him. So we're going to find out what language that was. For those of you out there that have never read that story, it's in Acts 26:13. There's a few scriptures in the book of Acts, chapter 9. There's another chapter in chapter 26. But in the 26th chapter, it actually said what language Yahushua spoke to the Apostle Paul in. So Acts 26:13, at midday, O king, I saw on the way a light from heaven, above the brightness of the sun, shining round about me, and them which journeyed with me. And when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking unto me, and saying in the Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the prick. So the voice that spoke to the Apostle Paul was Yahushua, and that voice spoke to him in the Hebrew tongue. And before we touch on that, let's go to the 15th verse. And I said, Who art thou, Lord? And he said, I am Yahushua, whom thou persecutest. Now here, when you read the English, it says Jesus, which we hate saying that word. But his name is, if he spoke to him in the Hebrew tongue, it is impossible for him to say this name here. All right. And even when you go to that name, it directs you all the way back to the name Joshua, which the name Joshua, when you go down and you search it properly, it goes back to the name Yahushua. Yahushua is deliverer. So when we go here to the Hebrew, right, we'll go to the word Hebrew or Hebrew language, right? So Hebrew tongue, the word tongue is the dialectos, and the word Hebrew is, excuse me, Hebraïs, which it goes back to the root word of that goes back to the name Eber. Now, those of you that know, that have been studying, you know that when you go back to the Table of Nations, as the so-called scholars, or the scholars call it, in the book of Genesis, the 10th chapter, one of the main individuals within that genealogy is Eber. Now, the reason why the scriptures focus on Eber is because prior to that you had Joktan and you had Peleg, which were brothers. Now Peleg, whose Hebrew name was Pelag, his name was changed. I'm sorry, his not changed. Salaki. His name meant division, because during his time there was going to be a division. So what division was that? It was a division in language. All right, and that's what happened. The tongues were divided back then because they were only speaking one language and one tongue, which was the Hebrew language. And from the Hebrew language, that's where all of the tongues out there came from. All right. So Hebraïs, it says Hebrew, the Hebrew language. Not that, however, in which the Old Testament was written, which is bullshit, but the Chaldee. Now that's not what that's talking about. It's talking about the Hebrew language, which at the time of Yahushua and the apostles had long superseded it in Palestine. No, because the scripture we're going to go to is going to prove to you that the Aramean language, which they're trying to say that they were speaking there, was the language of the learned. Now, when we go to the word Eber, the root word Eber, right, for Hebraïs, it says Eber or Hebrew, the region beyond, the son of Salah and the great grandson of Shem, one of Abraham's ancestors. Okay? And when you go to the actual root word of this Greek word Eber, it goes back to the Hebrew word Ibar. And the word Ibar means the region beyond, but it also means past. Because here it just gives you different Israelites that had that name. And when we go to the root word of that, you have region beyond or across side, region, opposite side, but it also means past. Let's see if they have it here. See, they don't give you everything on here. When you go there, I did a lesson the other day dealing with, I thought I had saved that, dealing with the Ben Yehudi online. And in the Ben Yehudi online, it gives you the Hebrew, it gives you the English, and it gives you the Hebrew, right? Let me type it online. And when you go to the word, I believe, uh, past, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I looked it up. I don't have an actual copy of the book on me, but I do have the online version, which I put in the description box of the other lesson I did. Let me see if it comes up now, unless they moved it, because these devils are known to do that. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Nah, see, I just had it the other day and it's gone. But when you look up the word past, P-A-S-T, like from the past, it'll give you the word Ibar or Eber. Okay? Let's see. How can I do this? Because I know I've done lessons on this before, because those are key names that you should know. Like, everybody should know what Abraham means, what his name means. Everyone should know what, Isaac and Jacob and Israel, certain key names you should know. And Eber happens to be one of those names that brothers, out there should know, because it's very important to the ministry. And the word Eber goes back to, Barak Tehal Bashem Yahushai. The scripture just came back that I was thinking about earlier. Genesis 14. We're going to read that. And I'm going to try to see if I can pull up the video I did on that. This is Genesis 14:13. And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, the brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. All right, so it called him what? Abram the Hebrew. Now let me see if I can find that video. Just bear with me, or not. Let's see. I think it was You Know Better Than That. Let's see. And let me see if this was it. If this was actually it. Because I actually put it in the description box. Nope, this is not it. So let's go back. And let's see. Damn, I thought I had put that in the description box, unless they clipped it. Maybe it was You Know Better Than That, and they probably clipped, because these devils do what they do. They might have just clipped it, because usually if you put it in the description box, they don't really mess with it. But obviously, let me see. I'll let you know right now. So I'm almost positive You Know Better Than That. Come on. Yep, it was this one. And I had put it in the description box. Yep, it's right there. I can see it. But for some reason, when I went to the description box, they took it out of the description box. Goddamn. About to drop the F-bomb on them. And I thought I had saved it. I know I saved it. I'm not bugging. But let's see. Moon phases. Nah, these devils and took the whole thing down, the whole site. Let me see something. Just bear with me. Nah, it's not coming up. All right, so we'll move on. Let me try one more thing, and then we'll just move on from there. It was just up here too. It's crazy. I mean, the site comes up, but the what you call it doesn't come up. But it's all good. All right, so I mean, you get the point. If you look it up yourself, wait a minute. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah, it's moving kind of slow. Yeah, it's not coming up. All right, I mean, I got it, but it ain't coming up. This thing is moving kind of slow. But anyway, be that as it may, the word Eber means past. You could say, to pass over, like to cross from one region to another, but it means past. And that's the reason why Eber was named that, because he's through him and his lineage, that's who kept the language. Because Peleg, Pelag, he actually was named that because there was going to be a separation or a division, excuse me, in the language and in the nations. And we could read about that in Deuteronomy 32, where it speaks about the Most High dividing to the nations their inheritance. Just want to bring out something real quick, and then we can move on. Just make the other point of the Aramean language is the actual, the Aramaic language was the actual language of the learned. So here we got Genesis 10:24, and Arphaxad begot Salah, Salah begot Eber. And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of the one Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Right. So Peleg, Pelag means division. And through that line is who kept the Hebrew language. That's why they called Abram the Hebrew. All right, because it goes all the way back to Eber, not he that crosses the region beyond, because Eber didn't cross that region beyond. He was already over there. So they say that Abram was called Abram the Hebrew because he crossed the region beyond. No, well, their name was already in effect before he crossed. All right, so let's get to the main point. All right, so we got Eber goes to Ibar. Yahushua spoke that language. Now, when we go to Isaiah 36 and 7, you can read the history. It's in First Kings 18, and then also in Second Chronicles, I think it's 32. But the one in Isaiah 36 and the one in 2 Kings 18, they go into a little more in depth. Isaiah 36 and 7, it says, "But if thou say to me, we trust in the Lord our power." This is Rabshakeh, which was the captain of the guard of the Assyrian empire. I forget exactly what Assyrian king was in power at this time. This was during the reign of Judah. It could have still been Shalmaneser, but it could have been somebody else. I would have to go back and refresh my memory on that. But he was the actual captain of the guard, and he was popping off because Samaria was taken down. Many other strongholds of different nations were taken down. So they really were feeling themselves that their God was the God, and that the Most High was not the Most High. That he wasn't the power. And pretty much they came to Jerusalem. And at the time, Hezekiah was the king of Judah, and they came there. And then Hezekiah had sent an embassy to go by the wall to speak to Rabshakeh and the individuals that were with him, and this is what took place. It says, this is Isaiah 36 and 7. "But if thou say to me, we trust in the Lord our power, is it not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah have taken away, and said to Judah and to Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar? Now therefore give pledges, I pray thee, to my master, the king of Assyria, and I will give thee 2,000 horses, if thou be able on thy part to set riders upon them." Now this individual was speaking the Hebrew language, the Jews' language, when he was speaking, here. "How then wilt thou turn away the face of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put thy trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen?" And am I now come up without the Lord against this land to destroy it? The Lord said unto me, go up against this land and destroy it. Now here goes a point in verse 11. Then said Eliakim and Shebna unto Joah. So now Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah unto Rapshakeh. These are top men, top ranking men that were learned. Then you had the common people of Israel that were also by the wall listening. And Rapshakeh, which was Syrian, he was speaking in the Hebrew language, in the Jews' tongue, and he understood both the Jews' tongue and the Aramaic, his own tongue, the Aramean tongue, right? And this is what the top, men of the king said to Rapshakeh. I pray thee, speak, I pray thee, unto thy servants in the Syrian language. And when you go to the Syrian language, that's where you get the word Aramaean from. Because when you go to the word Syria or Syrian, right, it says Aramya. Just so you got Ibar, which is Hebrew, but you have Ibarya or Hebrite, right? So you have Syrian language is Aramya. That's the language, Aramya, right? So let's go back. Let's read that again. Speak, I pray thee, unto thy servants in the Syrian language, for we understand it. So who's this? This is Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah speaking unto Rapshakeh and telling, look, speak to us in the Syrian language because we understand it. Now, what about the common folk? What about the common people in Israel? He said, speak, I pray thee, unto thy servants in the Syrian language, for we understand it. And speak not to us in the Jews' language in the ears of the people that are on the wall. So what does that imply? What is that saying? That's saying that the common people of Israel did not know the Aramean language. Why? Or the Aramaic. Why? Because they were not learned. But the higher ups that were under the king's council, they understood. Why? Because they were learned men. So it stands to reason that Yahushua and the disciples were not speaking the Aramaic or the Greek because they were considered to be unlearned. And we're going to get that. And that was the point that the elder pastor was making on his video. So when we read verse 12, it says, but Rapshakeh said, hath my master sent me to thy master and to thee to speak these words? Hath he not sent me to the men that sit upon the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you? Then Rapshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language, which is what? The Hebrew. And said, hear ye the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. So he spoke to them in the Hebrew tongue. But the people understood the Hebrew. They were common, but they didn't understand the Aramaean, which was the Aramaic or the Syrian script, which is what you see when you look at different Torahs. Let me see if I could type in Hebrew language, see what comes up. I mean, I could have typed in Aramaic. I just want to get an image just to show you. This is it right here. That's the Syrian language right there. All right. If you type in Aramaic, that's what's going to come up. Now, when you go to the actual Hebrew, the Paleo Hebrew, that's those are different characters. And the Aramaic is pronounced different than the actual Hebrew. Let's see if I can pull up a nice big one so you can see it. All right, beautiful. See? Oops, Salakia. My bad. See, that's different than the other one. And you can compare the both. Just type in Syrian language or Aramaic and type in Paleo Hebrew, and then you compare the both side by side. You got to put in your own work, your own research. So these men, which was the captain of the guard of the Assyrian army, was speaking to the people and the counselors of the king in the Hebrew language. And the counselors of the king said, look, speak to us in the Syrian language, for we understand it. So what did that mean? That means that the people didn't understand it. He said, but don't speak to us in the Jews' language or in the Hebrew in the ears of the people. So it stands to reason that when we go up into the New Testament times, the Aramaic language was considered to be one of the learned languages, just like Greek, just like Latin, you know, and it's possible. I'm just making an assumption here. I ain't trying to make an ass out of you or me, but you know, it's possible that the Apostle Paul did speak Latin and Aramaic because he was learned. Now the scriptures don't say that. I'm just saying that it's possible because he was a very learned man. It just speaks about him speaking in Hebrew and speaking in the Greek language. All right, but it's very possible that he spoke those other languages. You know, because he said I speak tongues more than you all. You know, so it's possible that he did speak it, but it doesn't say that in the scriptures. You know, I'm just making a point here, because the Apostle Paul was learned. He went to those House of Scrolls or colleges at the time. You know, he was learned. He was learned in the law. He knew the Hebrew. He knew the Greek. And this is why the Lord chose him as a chosen vessel to go and speak to the Israelite foreigners that predominantly spoke the Greek language. Okay? But now, on the other hand, let's go here real quick. Yahushua and the disciples were not considered to be learned men because they did not go to these colleges. And they looked at him in disdain because they never went there. So it's pretty much like us today. We never went to college to as far as to learn, you know, the breakdown of the scriptures and all of that. So we're considered to be unlearned because we don't have Esau's certification. We don't have his paperwork. We don't have his authority, which who made him the authority, I don't know. But we don't have his authority, so he's going to talk shit because we don't come with the same message that they come with, and they don't consider us to be authorities because we don't have the paperwork and we didn't go to college, you know, to cement that, you know, so to speak. But the Lord said that the wisdom of this world is foolishness with the Most High. And this is what they said about Yahushua, right? Let me see if I always have a little bit of a hard time. Here we go. St. John 7:14. Now about the midst of the feast, Yahushua went up into the temple and taught, right? Now, if you're teaching in the temple, you're supposed to, you know, have been one of the individuals that went to those different schools of higher learning of Israel back then, right? But Yahushua didn't go to them because he was taught directly from the Father Yahweh. And it says, and the Jews marveled, saying, how knoweth this man letters, having never learned? Because he didn't go to those colleges. So as we read in the Old Testament in Isaiah, that the top echelon, for lack of better words, of the king, they were considered to be noblemen. A nobleman was considered to be a nobleman because they had tutors, and those tutors would teach them how to, you know, they would teach them different languages. They would school them in the scriptures. They would school them in many different things. So they would be considered sons of noblemen because they actually were learned, because their what's the word I'm looking for? Their upbringing and their parents, you know, usually were well-to-do. They were considered more like royalty than the common people, which the majority of Jake back then, they were commoners. And that's what they were considered, right? So before we go back there, Galatians 4:1. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all. Why? Because they're still on the same level, because he hasn't been taught. That's why it says, in I believe it's in Ecclesiastes in the Bible, blessed are you, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles. Why? Because he would be learned in the ways of, you know, of proper etiquette how to properly deal and properly judge. He won't be selfish. He'll more than likely be someone that will be trustworthy in certain cases. If he was a honest man. Let me see if I can get that real quick. And that's what it was. Nobility taught their sons. Let me see. Is the son of. Let me see if that'll come up. Should come up in Ecclesiastes. Yep, right here. Ecclesiastes 10 and 17. It says, Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season for strength and not for drunkenness. Right, because they were taught proper etiquette. So let's go to this word nobles. And that's what was said about the Bereans. They were more noble than they of Thessalonica. So in other words, they were taught and learned in these ways. And when you're taught and learned, guess what? You're going to apply the same method that you learned to when you're studying. Like you see how brothers in GMS look up, words and go into the Hebrew and the Greek and search different things. Well, that's because of the training that brothers received, just like the training that we received. All right. So the word there is char. Looks like char for nobles. Char. It says a noble, freeborn one. So they had like a rank. They were not just regular individuals. They were more apt to learn. Let's go to Acts 17, I believe that is, or 16. What is it? 17 or 16? When it speaks about the Bereans, right? Acts 17 and 10. And the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night unto Berea, who coming thither went into the synagogue of the Jews. These were more noble than those in Thessalonica, and that they received the word with all readiness of mind, and searched the scriptures daily whether those things were so. Why? Because they were trained properly. Because they had tutors. All right. Now let's look up this word noble. More noble. You have the word eugenos. Eu is good. Genos is genes. Good genes. They came from a particular stock. They came from aristocracy. All right. Aristocracy would teach their sons, their daughters, how to properly maneuver, train them. It says, well born of a noble family, noble-minded, and they were brought up as what? With tutors, as we're reading in Galatians 4 and 2, but is under tutors and governors unto the time appointed of the Father. So they were trained properly. But Yahushua and the disciples were not considered that. Because when we go to St. John 7 again and 15, and the Jews marvel, saying, how knoweth this man letters, having never learned? So let's look up that word learned. And the word there is manthano, which means to learn, be apprised, to increase one's knowledge, to be increased in knowledge, to hear, be informed. So they said that Yahushua never went through the training that they went through, to learn by use and practice, right? And the Holy Spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua is what trains and guides his men. When we go to Acts 4 and 13, it says, now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, and perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant men, they marveled, and they took knowledge of them that they had been with Yahushua. So let's see, this word unlearned should be, nope, this word unlearned is a little different from the other one. This word unlearned is agramatos, which you got grammar. I'm not sure if it's going to go into grammar, because when you see a at the beginning of a word, is sometimes it's no or not. Like pretty much not learned. Yeah, it goes back to grammar. Yeah, not grammar. It says letter. See, bill, writing. So this word here is a compound word. Agramatos means no letters. In other words, they don't have. Wow, this is heavy, man. This is heavy, man, because this goes into today. Like they don't accept us because we don't have letters from these different colleges. We don't have certificates from these different colleges. So pretty much they don't accept us because we don't fit into their criteria. But nevertheless, these are the ones the Lord deals with. He said he chosen the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. And the wisdom of this world is foolishness with the Most High. That's heavy. Agramatos literally means no letters. Where your certificate at? Where your Doctor of Divinity certificate? Illiterate, unlearned. And like I said, you go to you have Alpha, which is which is the first letter of the alphabet, of the Greek alphabet, which could also mean no or not. And then grama, not grandma, GRAMMA. It says letter, bill, writing, learning, scripture, written. So we have no letters. So we don't have the stamp of approval of Esau to teach. That's why they don't acknowledge us. That's why they don't accept what we say. But the Lord never said you had to go and get that. You see? So based off of this, like I said, going through the scripture that we went through in the Old Testament, dealing with the higher ups or the nobles or the good genes, as we read earlier about nobles, of Eliakim, was it Eliakim? Salakia. Yep, Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah. These were men that were learned. That's why they knew the Syrian language and they knew the Hebrew language. But when you go to the common people of Israel, they didn't know the Aramaic language because that was considered the language of the nobles or the learned. All right? So Yahushua and the disciples were not considered learned men. So it would be impossible for them to know the Aramaic language when the Hebrew language is the common language of Israel. I hope you brothers understand, where this is going. So that's pretty much it on that. And I'll leave it there. I have made it various topics, but I really, don't have anything else at the moment. But Lord's will, if something else comes up, Lord's will, I do another lesson. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.